Well, good afternoon, Dr. Resnick. Of course, you know, I'm Ed Jones, and we have been friends. And you've been a great helper to me over the years because you are an exemplary health person, a physician that thinks outside the box. And I'm very excited, as I always am, to speak to people who are seekers and who also want to empower others in a system that kind of needs a lot of assistance today, that is not doing its best job, which is the medical system. So welcome to our conversation, and I want you to perhaps give a little bit of explanation, maybe a little bit about your history. You were a physician here in Chattanooga for many, many years, and we always recommended you because you were practicing more functional, certainly open-minded thinking of how do we actually help a patient to heal, not treat a symptom. And we were always totally confident anytime we would send to you because we knew you had the same language, of course, that we do within our group. So give people a little bit of background, if you will, just for a minute of your history and what you have done in the past.
And thanks, Ed, for that introduction. So I was formally trained as a medical doctor. My postgraduate training included 2 years of general surgical training, and then I finished residency and did a fellowship in obstetrics and gynecology. And I think it might have been around the early 2000s I found that I was using different modalities to actually get people better that were outside of the language that I had learned in my conventional medical training. For example, in women that have pelvic pain, the common response for a conventionally trained doctor is to do a surgical procedure, look in with a laparoscope and see what was going on. And I found that what I was doing was working on musculoskeletal contributions. I was working on her mindset and maybe traumas associated with her pelvic pain. I was working on diet and working on a woman with her gut. What I found is that in so many different cases, I was using modalities that had not been taught to me in medical school that were actually keeping people out of the OR. It was actually helping my patients to get better. So it was around 2008 or 2009, I started doing the courses with the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine, also known as A4M, and did their fellowship in anti-aging and regenerative medicine. And then from then to this point, I haven't looked back because I think that we are at an important cusp in sort of the development of medicine in our lifetimes. And that is that we've got two conversations going. One is the conversation between conventionally trained doctors, which is allopathic medicine. Here's a funny story. I'd practiced as an allopathic doctor for probably 15 years before I decided to see what allopathic meant. So I looked it up in the dictionary, and it quite simply says the use of a drug or a cream or a lotion to counteract the symptom. Really? So what's so interesting is that right. So I'd been an allopathic doctor. I went to an allopathic medical school, did an allopathic residency training program. I never knew what that meant. So that's the current, language that's being used to address health. And what I realized on the flip side is that there's this alternative language as well. And as you know, it's everything from, mind-body practices to all kinds of different contraptions or machines or ways of, looking at iridology or electrical impulses across the skin. I mean, there's so many different modalities that approach health from a different perspective. But it's almost as if these two styles of thinking are two ships kind of passing in the night. And I mentioned that to an associate of mine at one time, and he said, "Scott, I think you're entirely wrong. These are two ships that are on a collision course with one another." And it's like that caused me to change my perspective a little bit. So I think that, there's a time and a place for Western conventional medicine. I mean, if I'm stabbed, give me general anesthesia, antibiotics, and a good surgeon. I mean, I think it's really appropriate in some cases. But for the primary diagnoses that are killing 90% of the people in the westernized world, cardiovascular disease, heart disease, stroke, cancer, diabetes, hypertension, you and I both know that there are much better approaches than just the conventional way, which is to say, take a drug.
Absolutely. What a great explanation. And I know the purpose of this video is that you're going to have an option to help empower people on their own path. And it's not about selling anything. This is about them learning through certain methods of basically consulting with you. Is that correct?
That, it's so funny because that's one thing that I'm glad you brought up. I mean, I was always amazed in my clinical practice. And again, I've been really practicing functional medicine in a dedicated fashion for the last 10 years, I was always amazed at how smart people were who came in to speak to me, and how educated people were, and how much time and effort they put into reading books, going online, taking courses. And a common theme amongst so many of my patients was how dismissed they felt by their conventional medical doctors. So what that does is it brings to light that's that's an instant pain point that I found in a lot of folks, is that people are really doing the legwork. They're putting in the effort and the time and a lot of money in some cases as well, to try to become as educated as possible about their healthcare. But when they try to interface with their mainstream conventional trained doctor, a lot of times they're put down and even made to feel pretty bad about having this understanding. So that's an interesting place that we find ourselves. What happens is then that group of educated, motivated, determined people goes where? They go to Dr. Google, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you and I both know that it's really the information that you get from Google is either a function of who's paid the most to Google to surface their information, or whatever the like the current trend is that people are talking about. Maybe it's bone broth. So what I'm trying to do in my professional life is I'm trying to help to bridge some of these communications, to help to educate, to take this motivated and deserving group of people that want to be better stewards for their own healthcare, and find a way where we can first provide good, coherent, science-based information. And then not only that, then give them people options as to where to begin to take steps to better your own healthcare, whether it's through behaviors, whether it's through diet, whether it's through testing, and even supplementation. Because I think there's a point where if people aren't able to get the care that they need from their doctors, they're going to look to try to do it on their own. And sadly, I think that the digital world these days is just replete with so many people that are out there just trying to make a buck on somebody's pains and fears. And personally, I abhor that. And I know that you feel the same way.
Absolutely. And desperate people either get paralyzed and do nothing, and then they continue to spiral downward, or they will look everywhere for something of assistance. And the problem is, again,
Right.
I hear it every single day. We have 300 plus customers who come in, and many of them have some very significant issues. And some of the nightmares that we hear about, products they purchase, or certain practitioners they may go to, which some people, it's not because I disagree with their practice. There are people out there who are taking advantage of these desperate souls, and that is Google, that is certain people, that's certainly products from companies. And like I said this morning on another podcast, the World Health Organization still says that 70% of the world uses botanical medicine, but I had to follow that up with, the reason they do is because it's successful and it's effective and it's inexpensive, but only if you find the right people, the right information, and the right quality. Well, finding is the goal, and you're helping people to find and elevate their whole system of education. Again, part of that is to help them go back to their healthcare professional and perhaps help that professional help them. So what does this look like for a person if they wanted to take a step on being empowered? I guess that would be a good word. Is that a good phrase?
I know. I think that is the word. I think that, I would say that my mission statement is to empower people to be better stewards of their healthcare. But not only that, I think an important factor as well is to actually give people a plan or a path or a choreography in which to assess these things. And part of this talk, we were talking about how, so often people come into your store and they're like, what supplement am I needing? And you say, let's take a look at what you're taking currently. And they look down and they lift up a shopping bag that's got 40 different things in it. And yes, these are products that might be used for detox, or to augment thyroid health, or to augment our immune system, or, help with our cortisol functioning. But oftentimes there's no rhyme or reason around it. And what I've really found in my practice is that the way that our human physiology works is that there are different systems that we need to address in an almost algorithmic and choreographed fashion, in which by satisfying a certain system, then our body has the wherewithal to then go on and make other parts of its of our physiology work better. what that does is that it does a few things. The first is that it deconstructs the complexity of a human animal into a set of interrelated systems, which, if we address those systematically and independently, is something that really anyone who can watch a video or read a book, I believe, can understand how to address some of these different factors. If you'd like to, I can kind of go into a little bit about what, how this might work.
Yeah, go into, because we're going to run out of minutes here, go into a person's listening right now and yes, this sounds like me. I'm down some dead end streets. My person's not really helping me because they don't have a toolbox big enough. And I just want to learn what is available. What should I know in order to pursue this path of optimal health? So what does that look like for the person listening?
What it looks like is, and what I'm trying to put together is basically a program, which effectively follows the same process that I used in my clinical practice that I've been working with patients on for a decade. What this does is it incorporates education. It incorporates what I feel are some of the more fundamental laboratory tests that we need to be looking at to actually get a good handle on what's going on in our body. And you and I both know what those are. It's, like probably the big three are inflammation, insulin, and cortisol. Would you agree with that?
Yes, absolutely. It will spiral people if those are out of balance.
Right. Now, there's a place and a time for checking for black mold, doing a screening for Lyme disease, measuring, some of the more esoteric tests that we have, like an organic acid test. But I think that too often people kind of go down these rabbit holes of checking for their mold, checking for, for fatigue, when they're missing the most fundamental parts of the process, which is to know how your insulin's working, know how your cortisol's working, know how your thyroid's working. Because in my practice, when I help people to satisfy their nutritional needs, and I mean, not only, when I say nutrition, I don't mean South Beach diet or Atkins diet. I mean, what our body needs to build muscle, to run enzymatic reactions, to make DNA. When these are satisfied, then our body's able to actually effect some of the other processes that are downstream. And it's really just sort of it's a choreographed approach to really making our brains and our heart and our reproductive organs work well. So that's my desire, and I'm in the process of putting together a course that would actually help people to take the steps in a science-proven, systematic approach to know what needs to be satisfied, so that when you get into the more complex things like addressing mold or like taking care of a chronic Lyme condition, that our body is well equipped to actually have the tools that we need to address these things.
I love the word choreograph because it makes such good sense that, and again, I don't want to be too critical of traditional models because they save a tremendous amount of lives, there's no doubt, but they're not choreographed people because they actually don't respect the innate power within our own system that we were put on this earth for, which is to heal.
Right.
And we've healed for tens of thousands of years, mainly without any drugs and other interruptions of life or whatever, and it's done very well overall, except in certain segments. Real young children is just horrendous how that would be bad, but we've fixed all that with sanitation and many other things. But
Correct.
So a patient or a client right now, they're feeling lost. What do you want them to do? What would be your wish for them to do right now, considering that conversation?
Well, the first thing that I'm doing is I'm opening up time in my schedule to just have conversations with people. What I want to do is I want to find, speak to a number of people who have been struggling with trying to bridge this gap between the natural alternative healthcare style of thinking and the interface that they have with their conventional insurance policies and doctors as well. So that's the first thing is I want to help to create a program to guide people through the processes that I've used with my patients for 10 years now. I realize that if I sit with one person, an hour of my time is spent meeting with one person. But because of the beauty of Zoom and the internet, is that we can create platforms where we can communicate our understanding and our knowledge to greater populations. So what I'm trying to do right now is to get a sense of where people have really struggled the most in their journey. And over the next few weeks, I'll be opening up slots in my Calendly schedule just to talk to folks, get an idea of what they've been struggling with, hear a little bit about what their personal challenges are. And I have no doubt that in the process, we can both benefit, because I can learn where the pain points have been in this process. Is it finding your doctor? Is it talking to your provider? Is it knowing what lab tests to prioritize? And in exchange, I have no doubt that I can help give an individual some insight into a little more insight into how I would look at their condition, and hopefully a little bit of guidance as well.
So they're helping you, you're helping them, right?
That's the plan.
Yes.
That's right.
And we're not talking exchanging money here, right?
Oh, absolutely not.
No.
No, when I say that I'm opening up slots in my calendar, it's because I want to speak to people and learn where we as physicians, and in particular physicians who've trained themselves to think out of the box and use some of these different resources at our disposal, how can I learn to better take my knowledge and disseminate it and share it with the broader audience? And where have people found struggles? Where have they found successes? Because with that information, I can better structure a course and a process that generalizes this thinking to a broader population.
I love it, because the ultimate goal will be an impact to change kind of the brokenness, at least for the people who are working with you. And so you're empowering them. You're going to set up a system that may become extremely powerful, that then can actually tweak and change a system that's not working at its optimal right now. So how do people contact you? What would be that information, website, whatever?
Well, what I'll be doing is I'll be setting up some openings through my Calendly slot, and that is it's Calendly, CALENDLY.com/Scott Resnick MD. And what this is it's just spending 45 minutes with me, sharing some of your stories, seeing if I could help you get some better insight into what's been causing some struggles in terms of your health, what might have been appropriately addressed, what might have been missed in the course of working with your conventionally trained doctor or, say naturopath. And in exchange, what I'm hoping is that people can share with me is what their biggest struggles have been, because I want to be sure that those needs are addressed.
All right. So, Dr. Resnick, this could be life-changing. I consider you a hero. You have a vision, and you are executing it. So a lot of people have visions that don't execute. Here you are doing everything, and I know people listening are going to be served very well. Even, in fact, just someone who cares like you do that can listen, that's healing in itself. So don't discount that.
Right.
So we are so blessed to have you in the world. You are, again, one of my heroes, and thank you for spending time with me, and we will be sharing this with a lot of people who it will change their life. So thank you, Dr. Resnick.
I appreciate that, Ed. It's always a pleasure talking to you, and I look forward to the next time that you and I can speak again.
Yes, I'm sure we will. Take care, my friend.
Okay, be well.